everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel, A Reader's Almanac. Well, it's April, it's raining outside. What better time to do the April Showers book tag? Would you believe that I was tagged an entire year ago by Jen of Jen's Reading Life? So I would like to thank Jen. Go check out Jen's channel. It's marvelous, and she's got lots of wonderful cozy and classic recommendations and much more. So without further ado, let's get to the questions. I have them taped up in front of me here so I can find them with easy reference. Question number 1 is share a book with water on the cover. For this, I chose Anne of Avonlea. And I love the Anne of Green Gables books. I've talked about them on my channel before. This is the illustrated junior library edition. Isn't it beautiful? Very spring into summer looking. And you can see the water, of course, on the cover here. So it's like behind her there, and then actually continues on the spine and all the way to the back. And there are lots of bodies of water in the Anne of Green Gables books. Nature and the seasons play a very important part in the writings of L.M. Montgomery, for sure. And so that is why I chose Anne of Avonlea. Okay, prompt number 2. What's a classic novel you would like to curl up with on the couch? For this one, I'm choosing a book that may not seem like the obvious choice, but I'm looking for a classic, first of all. And secondly, for some reason, this book always just reminds me of overcast gray days and water. For that reason, I have chosen Jane Austen's Persuasion with this lovely fabric design on the cover. This is a Vintage Classics edition, and I have the whole set of these. This, of course, is the marvelous romance between Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth. It's a very slow burn of a novel. It's lovely. And, it takes place in a number of locations, such as Bath, and also, I believe, Lyme. So, there is ocean, there are rainy days in it, and of course, just, the whole idea of the sea and sea spray. And Anne is a bit sad in various parts of this book, as is Captain Wentworth in his hours of quiet romantic desperation. And so I am choosing this book because this is a classic I would definitely love to curl up with on a dark, rainy, overcast day. Question number 3. What is a scary book you would read during a rainstorm? I think it's not necessarily scary, but it is kind of suspenseful. It's got that sort of old-fashioned Gothic suspense. And so for that reason, I would choose Madam, Will You Talk by Mary Stuart. I love all of the Mary Stuart books, and I'm slowly making my way through all of them. A lot of them will be rereads for me. There's only a few I haven't read before, but this is actually, I believe, the first or second book. And this is about a young woman named Charity who goes to Provence, and she gets embroiled in this kidnapping of a young boy. There is a sinister plot. I believe, does she go to Marseille? She's in Provence. She's in the area. And it's just such an evocative and atmospheric book. Mary Stuart is just wonderful at creating evocative and atmospheric environments for her characters. She's marvelous at describing rainstorms, thunderstorms, downpours, sun beating down in the humid air onto a pavement in, Provence or in Greece or in Italy. So she just is really great at doing that. And so for that reason, I am choosing Madam, Will You Talk by Mary Stuart. For some of these, I'm going to actually choose more than one book because I've got so many that fit these prompts. Another, I don't know if you would call it a classic. It's kind of a vintage classic to me. And that is another book for a sort of scary or Gothic book I would read during a rainstorm. That would be Anya Seton's Dragonwyck. And this takes place in 1844 into 1845. It actually starts in the fall. Look at this beautiful cover, first of all, though. I'm collecting this series as well from Mariner Books. So I'll just read you a little bit of the plot on the back here. It's spring 1884. The Wells family receives a letter from a distant relative, the wealthy landowner Nicholas Van Ryn, and he invites one of their daughters for an extended visit to his Hudson Valley estate, Dragonwyck. And at the time, the protagonist in this is the 18-year-old girl, Miranda, or young woman, I should say, Miranda. And she goes to stay at the old Gothic house, Dragonwyck. And it's just a very suspenseful, atmospheric, romantic, kind of scary book. By today's standards, this might not be, I don't know how well it's aged, let's put it that way, with some of the themes that it has in it. But if you like an old-fashioned, vintage Gothic read, this will do it for you. Anya Seton is, of course, the author of many wonderful Gothic works, including Catherine and Green Darkness. So check this one out, Anya Seton, Dragonwyck. Well, the next question is a really easy one to answer. What's a good book recommendation for rainy days? I am going to choose two here as well. For some reason, these two books always make me think of a dark, overcast day. Now, it's true, it may be perhaps more in the autumn or winter, but the question was for a rainy day, so I'm going to use these for the prompt. And the first is C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. All you want to do is curl up with your coffee, your tea, your cocoa, or your Turkish delight, and just put a cozy blanket over you. If you have a fireplace, if you're lucky enough to have a fireplace, then have a fire going, and it's just whisking you away to the magical land of Narnia. I'm not going to explain what it's about because you know what it's about, right? The four Pevensey children that go to Narnia and experience all kinds of adventures and magic. And of course, the White Witch, and she's cursed the land with eternal winter. So it's just delightful and the perfect book to curl up with. And it always makes me think about the children who are playing hide and seek in the house in the country, and then Lucy comes upon the wardrobe. And that to me is just a very cozy rainy day kind of an image, right? So The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And then the other book that I would choose definitely for a rainy day is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This particular edition is a lovely one, illustrated by Tasha Tudor. And this, of course, is the story of the little girl Sarah Crewe, who becomes orphaned at a very young age and has to go live at Miss Minchin's academy, and suffers greatly there, but then experiences so many marvelous things in her young life. And it always reminds me of a rainy day. It's raining in some of the scenes. Sarah is sent out, and I remember, the hem of her skirt gets wet, and there's mud, and the mud gets kicked up onto her dress, and she really does suffer some misery in this book at the hands of the Miss Minchins. But there's also a great deal of magic and happiness in the book too. And it's just the perfect, any book about children that are sent away to school or who live in an orphanage. To me, that's something I like to read about on a rainy day. That would be A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Okay, question number 6. Share a book that has blue on the cover. I have 2 rainy day books that I'm going to share with you here. They're not necessarily rainy day books, but they meet the prompt. They both have blue on the cover. The first is the wonderful Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier. And this particular edition has navy and kind of a nautical look. And there's the ship right there. This is such a romantic and wonderful and mysterious, odd book. It's very eccentric. It's very dreamlike. It's as though you've fallen asleep and you're in a dream and you've woken up in this strange mansion, and Frenchman's Creek runs through the property and leads to the open sea, and there are characters in it who are just so dashing. And this is about Lady Donna St. Colombe, and she belongs to the Restoration Court. She goes away to the country to rest, and adventure and intrigue, suspense and romance follow. This is a marvelous book. You can't go too far wrong with Daphne du Maurier. Frenchman's Creek is a memorable read, and it's a great one for a rainy day. And the other book that has blue on the cover, that is a wonderful one. If you're tired of winter and dreariness and rain, and you want to escape vicariously to sunny Italy, this is the book for you. The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. Here's the lovely Virago Classics edition. I just love this cover. This book is just delightful, and it will really perk up your spirits if you're feeling blue yourself. In the front, it gives you a little synopsis of what happens in the book. First of all, look at the cheery gold yellow end papers. That's cheery. And then it says, on a dreary February afternoon, a discreet advertisement in the Times tempts 2 unhappy housewives to dream of sunshine and wisteria. Enchanted, Lottie and Rose set about finding companions to share San Salvatore, a small Italian castle on the shores of the Mediterranean. They unearth 2 rather unlikely companions, the dour Mrs. Fisher and Lady Caroline Dester, a bored social beauty. The women have nothing in common except a deep dissatisfaction with their everyday lives. Can a month in Italy with strangers be enough to restore them to their true natures? This is a classic from 1922, and if you are looking to be perked up, you cannot go wrong with The Enchanted April. It's just lovely, delightful. I love it. Okay, let's take a look at the next prompt here. Number 7, what book has a rainy setting at some point? I have 2 books to share with you for this question. The first is Frost in May by Antonia White. This is another Virago edition. And I've talked about this book before. It's the strangest thing. I think I talked about it in my boarding school books videos. And it's the only book that I recommend highly reading the first half of. The second half of the book I was not thrilled with. It kind of started to drag. So you might be wondering, why are you recommending it? I'm recommending it for the first half of the book because the first half is brilliant. The writing is just incredible. This is about a little girl. I think she's 9 years old. Her name is Nanda Gray. Yes, she's 9. She starts convent school, and she's sent away by her parents to get a religious education at a Catholic convent. And it becomes a very cruel and strange place. But the first half of the book, and the reason that I'm recommending it for an April Showers book tag, is because it has this prevailing sense of rain, of the dismal, of the dark, dreary, depressing, but also some beauty. And let's see, Antonia White is great at describing the stained glass. She's wonderful at describing the hallways with the old dark oil paintings at the convent, the long hallways, the dormitories, the chapel, the cafeteria, and the classrooms, just all of it, passageways, and when she's sent to see the Reverend Mother. It's all very kind of dark, and you have that sort of lemon scent of old wood, the wood polish, banisters, staircases, oil paintings, all of that. It just exudes that atmosphere. And the way Antonia White has described it is wonderful. Unfortunately, the second half does kind of drag on a bit. She based it very much on her own life, and I think that was a mistake, because she could have based it partially on her own life, but then take it into a more interesting narrative direction for the second half of the narrative arc and the resolution of the book. But the first half is brilliant, and so that's why I hold on to this book, because A+ for the first half. So that would be one choice, because that definitely makes me think of rain. And then the second book is a very different type of book. That is an old vintage copy that I have from long ago, and it is called The Twilight of Magic by Hugh Lofting. You may remember Hugh Lofting as the author of the famous Dr. Dolittle books, but he also wrote The Twilight of Magic. So this is my copy of that book. And this is just such a lovely, lovely story. Now, I'm going to admit, I haven't read this since I was little, and I don't quite remember what it's about, but I remember there are two children. I think it's set in the Middle Ages. It involves magic. The two children are, I want to say Giles? Yes, Giles and his sister Anne. And all I remember is that they run away or are on some kind of a journey. And like I said, it's a medieval kind of a setting. And there's an old woman called the Apple Woman, and she invokes some sort of magic. And I think in this world of castles and knights and dungeons and all of that, the world is on the edge of being at the end of magic, a time of magic, and at the beginning of the world of science. I do remember that. And it's the adventures that these children, Giles and Anne, go on together, and the journey they take and the people they meet. And I do remember that there is a scene in here. I remember being in bed as a child, as a little girl, with this book, reading about rain. I would have to reread it to find out exactly where that is, but whenever I see this book on my vintage bookshelf, I always think of rain and of the two little children and of magic. And so that's why I am showing it to you today. The Twilight of Magic by Hugh Lofting. Okay, next question. Which character would you like to share an umbrella with? Well, I have many choices for this. I know you're supposed to narrow it down to one, but how can one do that? So I am just going to offer up 4 choices for you for characters I would like to share umbrellas with. The first is Miss Silver in any of the Patricia Wentworth mysteries. And the one I'm holding up here is Lonesome Road. This is the first Miss Silver that I read. It's the 3rd in the series. And this one takes place in the country, in the rain, at an old farmhouse. And so for that reason, I chose this one. Also in contrast is the lovely, I mean, isn't this cover gorgeous? I love these Hodder and Stoughton editions, and these are the ones I'm collecting. But you know, the contrast of the beautiful bright pink and fuchsia and peony colors in contrast to a rainy day. Wouldn't this be a lovely mystery to curl up with? So Miss Silver is one. Another is Mrs. Harris in Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, another lovely pink copy of a book by the wonderful, wonderful Paul Gallico, who you know I love. So I'm not going to go into the details too much, but Mrs. Harris is the charwoman who has an opportunity to go to Paris and changes basically the life of everyone she meets there. It's the most magical, heartwarming book that will make you laugh and cry. It is bittersweet, but ultimately hopeful. And, you know, I associate spring with Paris and with rain and with, you know, I don't know what I associate it with, but it's another beautiful pink book. So that's another choice. And then two other ladies that I would like to share an umbrella with. One is Mrs. Palfrey, from Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont by Elizabeth Taylor. Love, 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 love this book. This is about an elderly woman named Mrs. Palfrey. She's been sent to live at a retirement community. And, you know, it's also a bittersweet book, which reminds me of rain again. But she has to go to the Claremont Hotel, and she's trying to adjust to being elderly and probably being in the last place she'll ever live. Her family's kind of abandoned her, but she does make new friends, and it has a really good blend of, you know, loneliness and sadness, but also wonderfully dark humor. And just the way she observes the world, I absolutely love. She's a lady after my own heart, and I would share an umbrella with her in a heartbeat. So that is Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont by Elizabeth Taylor. And how could I leave out one other person? That, of course, is Miss Marple. So I'm just holding this up as an example of a Miss Marple collection, but you could hold up any of the Agatha Christie Miss Marples. So I'm holding up the 13 Problems, which is a short story collection. But of course Miss Marple, because you could walk alongside her, and I don't know if she'd be actually like the most riveting company in terms of conversation, because usually she's so, you know, her head is so far away solving a mystery and putting everything together in her head. Poor Dolly Bantry, whenever she walks alongside Jane Marple, she sometimes says, "Jane, you haven't been listening to a word I've been saying," because Miss Marple is so busy putting the pieces of a mystery together in order to solve a crime and catch the culprit. So I just think it would be delightful to watch her doing that, you know, this little old lady under the umbrella, and I would be happy just to walk along quietly next to her or hum a tune while she's doing her sleuthing and investigating mentally. So, yep, this book is The 13 Problems by Agatha Christie. And finally, the last book that I'm going to share with you today, and the last question I'm going to answer as part of the April Showers book tag, is share a novel with a dry beginning but an amazing ending. This book is a little bit different from all the other ones that I've shared with you thus far, and that is Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. Here's a Penguin edition. Fell in love with this book, fell in love with Elizabeth Gaskell's writing style, had never read this before and decided to read it the year before last as part of Victober. At first I was doubtful because the first 50 pages, even 100 pages, did not seem like my type of book. It seemed to be rambling on very slowly, talking about aristocratic people, talking about boring wedding plans and, etiquette and manners and sitting at table and having tea and having dresses made. And I had thought to myself, oh my goodness, if this keeps going on and on, I'm going to have to DNF this, which I thought was horrible. But then the main character in the book, Margaret Hale, and her family move. And once they move to the north of England and the entire setting changes and she is among poor people and working class people in the mills, the entire thing changes key. And the action ramps up and the narrative really, really starts to take off there, and it becomes an unput-downable page turner. And there is romance. It's a rich contrast of the wealthy, the haves and have-nots, of the mill conditions and the impoverished living conditions of mill workers at the time, labor law, Victorian settings. It's got everything. And so then as the book starts to pick up, you understand why the beginning was so slow and kind of boring, at least for me. I can't speak for other people who read it. But it's supposed to show a contrast between Margaret Hale not living her best life versus then living her best life and really sort of waking up and living and seeing what's around her and seeing how everybody else lives and waking up to societal problems. So and I absolutely loved it. I highly, highly recommend Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. Well, that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I covered every single question in this prompt. It seems to me that there was another question which doesn't seem to be on my sheet here. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, thanks again, Jen, for tagging me in the April Showers book tag. I've really enjoyed coming up with my answers for this. By pulling all of these books out, it's made me want to read some of them over again. So thank you for that. It's been really, really fun. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all have April showers that lead to sunshine and beautiful flowers. And we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.